The morning sun spilled through the towering glass windows of the city skyline, glinting off chrome and steel. In the CEO's sleek black sedan, a young African-American man adjusted the rearview mirror, checking the route on his GPS with precise focus. The woman in the driver's seat, a top executive with a reputation for ruthlessness, barely glanced at him, until a mocking laugh escaped her lips. A sound sharp enough to slice through the hum of traffic, carrying the weight of assumption and condescension. He didn't flinch. His hand stayed steady on the wheel, his mind already calculating, preparing. Inside that polished vehicle, the collision of worlds was silent but electric. Her prejudice, loud and confident. His skill, quiet but lethal. One glance at the dashboard, one turn of the wheel, and the difference between success and disaster could be measured in seconds. Across town, a boardroom waited, a billion-dollar deal hanging by the thinnest of threads. Every second mattered. Every misstep could cost everything. And no one, not the CEO, not her rivals, not the assistants glued to their laptops, knew that the young man navigating the streets with calm precision held more power than anyone in the room above. One wrong street. One missed signal and it would all crumble. But he had a secret. 9 languages at his command, a network of connections and a mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. And today, that quiet power was about to speak louder than her laughter ever could. The young driver pulled smoothly into the underground parking of the corporate skyscraper, his hands steady on the wheel, eyes flicking briefly to the rearview mirror. The CEO, still chuckling under her breath, tapped impatiently on her designer handbag. To her, this was just another mundane ride, another employee to dismiss, another young man whose skills, she assumed, were limited to steering a car. But beneath his calm exterior, the driver's mind was already scanning the city map in his head, calculating every possible scenario, anticipating every potential roadblock. He had spent years mastering his craft. Not just driving, but observing patterns, learning signals, studying human behavior, and, most importantly, cultivating skills the world rarely saw. 9 languages whispered through his memory, each one a key to understanding and navigating the complexities of international deals, cultural nuances, and unspoken cues. Yet, here he was, invisible in the CEO's eyes, reduced to a stereotype she carried like an invisible armor. The office tower loomed above them, a monument to ambition and wealth. Inside, the executive team buzzed with anticipation. A meeting that could determine the fate of the company and a billion-dollar deal was about to begin. But the CEO, in all her experience, had overlooked one critical element: the man who had brought her here. The driver who had patiently learned not only the city streets, but the languages, cultures, and subtleties of the world she so proudly dominated. As he guided the car through the maze of elevators and valet lines, his mind traced the contours of the impending meeting. He anticipated questions in Italian, French, Mandarin, negotiations in Arabic, Spanish, Russian. Each phrase he could speak would act as a bridge between cultures, a lifeline in a negotiation where misunderstanding could cost billions. And yet none of this mattered to her in this moment. She saw only what she wanted: a driver, a face, a stereotype. He parked the car, opened the door with polite efficiency, and allowed her to step out, offering the faintest nod of respect. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she moved with purpose toward the glass doors, her laughter still lingering faintly in the air. Yet for him there was no resentment, only focus. Every moment counted, every detail mattered. And today, the quiet, invisible preparation of years was about to confront the arrogance of assumption. As she entered the conference room, unaware of what was to come, the driver remained by the car, observing, calculating, a calm presence amidst the swirl of corporate chaos. He understood what few others did. Power often hides where the world refuses to look, and skill can speak louder than status, louder than mockery, louder than wealth. Today, that power would be undeniable. The CEO strode into the boardroom with a confidence that seemed unshakable. The massive windows reflected the city skyline, a symbol of her power and authority. The deal on the table was monumental, a billion-dollar contract that could define the next decade for the company. She took her seat at the head of the table, her assistant distributing documents and the room buzzing with anticipation. Yet in her mind, the driver remained a mere peripheral, a background figure meant to get her here safely, invisible in the hierarchy she had spent years constructing outside the room. The driver remained in the shadows of the lobby, his ears tuned to snippets of conversation, his mind already calculating the intricate web of languages and cultural nuances that awaited in the meeting. Every moment counted. Every slip, every mispronunciation, every missed cue could unravel the billions at stake. Yet the CEO, still smirking at the memory of his supposed simplicity, had no idea that she had underestimated the quiet genius sitting just a floor below. As the meeting began, the negotiations immediately revealed the challenges ahead. Investors, executives, and international partners exchanged rapid-fire words in Italian, Mandarin, French, and Arabic. Subtle shifts in tone, the choice of a single word, even body language determined whether confidence was conveyed or hesitation exposed. The CEO, despite her experience, faltered almost immediately. Her limited knowledge of languages and cultural cues caused a series of small but critical misunderstandings. Eyes darted, subtle nods of confusion passed among the attendees, and the tension in the room escalated, like a storm brewing silently beneath calm waters. It was then that the driver made his move, silently entering the conference hall. Unnoticed by most, yet fully aware of the stakes, his 9 languages flowed effortlessly, each phrase calibrated for maximum effect, each translation bridging gaps that had seemed insurmountable. He interpreted the Italian executive's nuanced hesitation with precision, conveyed subtle French idioms to ease tensions, and rephrased Arabic expressions in a way that honored both language and cultural context. The billion-dollar deal, teetering on the edge of disaster, began to stabilize under his quiet intervention. The CEO, still unaware of the source of these linguistic corrections, glanced around in confusion. Charts were adjusted, graphs explained, and questions answered before she could react. She realized in slow, dawning horror that the driver she had laughed at, dismissed, and underestimated was now the linchpin holding the deal together. Every misjudged glance, every smirk she had cast in his direction now weighed on her conscience like an invisible chain. As the room reached the critical juncture, an executive from Asia raised a particularly complex point in Mandarin. The CEO's face betrayed panic. The discussion was about to derail entirely. The driver, calm and composed, responded instantly, navigating the subtle tonal shifts and technical jargon. A collective sigh of relief swept the room. The deal stabilized. The CEO's eyes widened as she realized the magnitude of what had just occurred. The young man she had ridiculed had single-handedly preserved billions in assets and reputation. Outside the immediate financial stakes, the racial undercurrents were palpable. In a room dominated by power, wealth, and influence, the CEO's assumptions about the driver's capabilities had nearly cost her everything. His calm competence, honed through years of dedication and skill, had shattered the stereotype she had imposed upon him. Every laugh, every sneer, now reflected back as ignorance, a reminder that prejudice blinds even the most powerful. The tension in the room slowly shifted, morphing from near disaster to incredulous admiration. The CEO's posture stiffened, her mind racing to reconcile the arrogance she had displayed with the reality before her. She realized in a humbling moment that respect is earned not through titles, clothing, or wealth, but through skill, preparation, and character. And here, standing before her, was proof of a truth she could no longer ignore. By the end of the meeting, the deal was finalized. Smiles and handshakes punctuated the room, yet the CEO's gaze remained fixed on the driver. She approached him privately as others filed out, her face a mixture of awe, embarrassment, and newfound respect. The power dynamic she had assumed was inverted. The man she had dismissed had not only saved the deal, but had taught her an undeniable lesson. Assumptions based on race or appearance are costly, dangerous, and wrong. The boardroom had emptied, leaving only the CEO and the driver. The city skyline outside the windows shimmered with late afternoon gold, but inside the air was thick with a different kind of tension, one that had nothing to do with finance or deals. The CEO's pulse raced as she turned to face the man she had once dismissed. Every detail of her laughter, every smirk, seemed to echo back at her now, amplified by the enormity of what had just occurred. He stood quietly, composed, almost statuesque, yet the intensity in his eyes was undeniable. This was no longer a matter of money. This was about recognition, respect, and the painful lessons of underestimation. She had laughed at him, reduced him to a stereotype, and in doing so almost jeopardized billions. Now, the truth was unavoidable. He had saved the deal, single-handedly, seamlessly, effortlessly. Her mind raced. Pride, embarrassment, awe, all collided in a storm she couldn't contain. She realized that power was not about titles, office size, or designer suits. Real power lay in preparation, skill, and the courage to act with precision when it mattered most. Every nuance of the meeting, the Italian idioms, the Arabic negotiation cues, the Mandarin tonal subtleties, had been navigated with a mastery she had never imagined, all without her noticing. For the first time, she truly saw him. The years of dedication, the silent learning, the humility that masked brilliance, all crystallized in this moment. And with that realization came shame, sharp and undeniable. She had underestimated someone not because of lack of talent, but because of the color of his skin and the assumptions she carried. Her laughter, once casual and dismissive, now rang hollow. The driver's 9 languages were more than tools. They were symbols of resilience, intelligence, and quiet strength. They represented the countless hours he had spent honing his craft in a world that refused to see his worth. She felt the weight of the billion-dollar deal as a reflection of her own failure to recognize human potential beyond appearances. As she swallowed her pride, she understood that this moment was transformative. Respect was no longer optional. It was necessary. Humility replaced arrogance, and curiosity replaced dismissal. The man she had laughed at had exposed not only his own brilliance, but also the limitations of her own worldview. He spoke softly, a polite gesture rather than words, guiding her attention back to the documents, clarifying details with subtle efficiency. She watched in awe as the same hands she had once considered ordinary now orchestrated clarity and precision, turning chaos into order. Her entire understanding of power, competence, and respect was reshaping in real time. In that charged silence, the CEO's perspective shifted irrevocably. The deal was finalized, not because of her experience or status, but because of the driver's quiet, relentless skill. And in that moment, she recognized a truth that would stay with her forever. Assumptions based on race, appearance, or background are not just morally wrong. They are dangerously limiting. As the sun set behind the skyscrapers, the CEO extended her hand, a gesture of acknowledgement, apology, and newfound respect. The driver's calm demeanor met hers, silent but eloquent, signaling that recognition had been received. The room, once filled with tension and hierarchy, now resonated with mutual understanding and respect. A profound reversal of power dynamics, and in that moment, she knew that the real lesson of the day extended far beyond a billion-dollar contract. It was about human potential, the dangers of prejudice, and the unassuming brilliance that often hides in plain sight. She had laughed. He had acted. And the world, for a brief, transformative moment, had shifted. The conference room had quieted. Outside, the city lights shimmered as dusk settled over the skyline, casting golden and amber hues across the buildings. The CEO sat back, her pulse gradually slowing, still absorbing the full weight of what had just transpired. She had faced a truth she could no longer ignore. Her assumptions, rooted in race and habit, had almost cost her not just a billion-dollar deal, but her own integrity. The driver, who had stood quietly, patient, and poised throughout the ordeal, now leaned slightly against the wall, his expression calm but firm. There was no triumph in his demeanor, no boastful pride, only the quiet dignity of a man who had done what needed to be done, regardless of who saw it or who mocked it. His 9 languages, his foresight, and his skill had bridged gaps that wealth, status, and arrogance could not. In the days that followed, the CEO's perspective shifted fundamentally. Meetings were no longer approached with condescension or arrogance, and interactions were measured by respect, insight, and recognition of individual merit. She observed the driver with a new lens, not as a subordinate, not as a stereotype, but as a professional, a problem solver, a person whose talent and intelligence demanded acknowledgement. The impact rippled beyond the office. Colleagues, inspired by the CEO's newfound humility, began questioning their own assumptions, realizing how often bias silently shaped decisions. The company culture shifted subtly but meaningfully, emphasizing inclusion, respect, and the recognition that talent is not defined by appearance, background, or social status. For the driver, nothing changed outwardly, yet everything had changed inwardly. The satisfaction of seeing the deal succeed, of knowing that his skills had been indispensable, provided a quiet pride unmatched by applause or recognition. He had acted not for acknowledgement, but because competence demanded action, and preparation meets opportunity only for those who commit to it quietly, diligently, and persistently. Late at night, the CEO reflected on the incident, replaying each moment in her mind. Her laughter, once careless, now haunted her, not with guilt alone, but as a catalyst for profound change. She realized that leadership is not demonstrated by dominance or confidence alone, but by the capacity to recognize value where others see none, to listen, and to act with humility. The driver's example became a benchmark within the company. Others who had been overlooked, underestimated, or marginalized found new opportunities as a result of policies that began to value skill and character over assumptions. Quiet brilliance no longer went unseen, and the lesson of respect, diligence, and competence became embedded in the organization's ethos. As the city lights glimmered outside the skyscraper, the CEO asked herself a question that would linger far longer than any financial metric. How many opportunities have been lost because we failed to see the people right in front of us? The reflection was humbling, powerful, and transformative. The story concluded not with applause or accolades, but with the enduring truth that human potential cannot be measured by superficial standards. Actions, skill, and integrity speak louder than titles, wealth, or first impressions. The driver's quiet brilliance had not only preserved a billion-dollar deal, but had reminded a world, sometimes harsh, often inattentive, that respect, humility, and recognition of true talent are invaluable. And as the CEO looked out over the city one final time that evening, she understood that lessons like this were rare, urgent, and necessary. The world was full of people like him, brilliant, capable, and overlooked. It was not enough to see them only when it was convenient. It was imperative to recognize them before opportunity demanded it and before assumptions threatened to blind us to what truly matters.